A warm welcome on a cool evening. Welcome to everybody back from Thanksgiving. And so we're appreciative of you being here tonight. I'm John Hannon, and I taught at Clemson for 8 years, 600 kids a semester. I don't know, did anybody here have me at any point? Because they're sort of falling off from the standpoint that I stopped teaching about 2 years ago because I was brought into the president's office to lead up the Brooke T. Smith Launchpad and all things entrepreneurship at Clemson. And so I do see some familiar faces. Hi, Rosie Rose, one of our former interns. This is a special night from the standpoint that your speaker, and she's going to talk for about 45 minutes, and please do stay throughout her presentation as a show of respect. But Michelle, this is kind of a full circle moment. She graduated in 2018. She was one of our interns. We've had over 300 interns over the last 10 years. You see all the composites. She's part of our family. She's part of our community. But she has a fascinating story to tell just about her experiences here at Clemson and thereafter. She kind of went the corporate route, and now she is starting her own company, which just, tickles our hearts from the standpoint that we never know when we influence young people here, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years, we never know who's going to bubble up. And we're not trying to make everybody Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg or anything like that. There's a lot of different, you can go with a startup company, and we're going to have some here later. I would encourage you to stick around and just talk to some of these companies for internships. But we have tons of internship opportunities tonight and throughout the course of the year. So get in touch with us regarding that. But you can do an internship at a startup. Big companies are kind of a bit, nervous right now, and they're not hiring as much. You can take a full-time job with a startup and get way more responsibility. So there was a time when you had to hide the fact that you were kind of entrepreneurial or that you'd worked at a startup out of fear that a big company was going to be like, oh no, we're worried about that person coming and bolting. But most big companies now, if you say you've had a little side hustle and you've, flipped sneakers or done anything, they're going to be like, oh, that guy's kind of interesting. We will give him a look above and beyond other people. So that being said, welcome. We want to I just want to thank you, and I want to thank a couple of people here. So I just want to give a couple quick thank yous. I'm going to make this brief. I do work for President Clemens and for Max Allen. Max is over here, but this is a picture of President Clemens. This is not a typical picture of him. This is him standing in line at the softball stadium. He shouldn't have to do that. He could get food delivered to his seats. He could go to the side entrance, but he actually gets in line with all the regular folks like you and me. So I think was an interesting thing. That was a spy camera that I took out and took a quick picture of him. But next person here is Max Allen, and that is my boss, and he's the chief of staff and senior vice president here at Clemson. So they welcome you as well here tonight. This is our staff, some of whom are still around. Kimberly, I'm not sure she just left, but Michelle Navis is right here. She's a huge help to us. Susan is here as well. She's in the back. Give her a wave, if you will. She's amazing. Liam Brake is our digital media intern. He's right here, and we'll be taking pictures. And you may appear on Instagram. I know it's not as noteworthy as being with Buddy the dog, but you're at the Launchpad, which is great. And Maggie is our person here our point person for all these symposiums, and we're super grateful to her. So just want to thank you all for coming here tonight. We're going to turn it over to Michelle. How many people are here for the first time to the Launchpad? So great. We're glad you're here. We do have internships. We have tons of other activities, and we have an amazing network of 400 plus Clemson alumni that you could reach out to, and they'll give you the time of day. They'll give you 20 or 30 minutes and help you with life advice, job advice, and all those kinds of things. So that being said, I'm going to hand this over to the Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities, Dean Vazzoni, and he's going to say a few words and welcome you as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Nicholas Vazheny, Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities. It's our week here this week. Just out of interest, how many of you are from the College of Arts and Humanities? Can I have a show of hands? 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Excellent. So a lot of what I have to say is directed to the four of you, but it is hopefully of interest to everyone else as well. First of all, a huge thank you to John Hannon and the Brooke T. Smith Launchpad team for putting on this series and for including our college. This is sorely needed, especially for us, as I will elaborate later. Ever since I started at Clemson in 2020, I've had an undergraduate advisory council that is a fresh group of students every year. So I have 5 years worth of feedback from them. And some of the issues change from year to year, but there are a handful that get brought up every year. And one of them is that Clemson is not doing enough to help especially arts and humanities students with their path forward after graduation. So John, thank you so much. This is exactly what we need. I hope we can continue doing this every year. I want to say something specifically to our arts and humanities students who are here. First of all, thank you for coming. I suspect that for many of you, when you hear the word entrepreneurship, you might think that has nothing to do with you, your vision of your future, or your priorities, or even what you think is ideologically appropriate. But I would suggest to you that you look at the concept of entrepreneurship more broadly. In a sense, each one of you, and that is each one of you, is the entrepreneur of your own lives and being. All the elements that go into being a successful entrepreneur in business are elements you use or should use to manage yourselves, your interaction with the world, and your journey through life. This includes the fact that you need to develop a concept of yourselves, a vision of your path forward. You need to imagine your goals and set your targets. You need to develop a financial plan and ensure you have the resources to meet your needs and fuel that path forward. You need to develop a network of people and institutions that are invested in you and your success. And on a regular basis, you need to take stock of where you are, review what you have accomplished, be self-critical and honest about your mistakes, and take corrective action and set new targets. In other words, we are all entrepreneurs. Another thing I've been trying to get across since I arrived at Clemson: arts and humanities degrees are preparations for any number of careers. Their disadvantage is that they are not specific. In other words, a nursing degree prepares you for a career as a nurse. An engineering degree prepares you for a degree as an engineer. A humanities degree prepares you for nothing in particular, but rather gives you the tools you will need to be able to arrive at a whole host of jobs, learn quickly, communicate clearly, understand the bigger picture, adapt, help to solve problems creatively, work with people, and in time, take on leadership, leading with empathy. It's interesting if you look at a number of companies, how many of the people in leadership position have a humanities background. A humanities degree is a wild card that helps you join a team and fit in quickly. I urge you to recognize this gift you've been given and these skills you've worked so hard to develop. Over the years, I've talked to several arts and humanities majors who have seemed reluctant to consider taking jobs in lines of work that have nothing to do with what they believe they have studied. I certainly get that inclination, but if that describes you, I urge you to be open-minded about jobs you might take on in these still very early years of your life. I was a German major in college with an interest in becoming an opera stage director. Please don't laugh. In the end, I got a PhD in German literature and culture, became a professor, and ultimately a department chair, and most recently, a college dean. Go Tigers. But in those early years, I took on a whole range of jobs in the management office of a large shopping mall, as a legal assistant at a law firm, and as a field supervisor for the Census Bureau during the 1990 US Census. Yes, I am that old. In all of these jobs, I learned so much about people, about work culture, about supervising and being supervised, about following orders, about teamwork and leadership, about office organization and procedures, about paperwork and deadlines, about morale. I can't imagine ever making it to be a dean if I had not learned all those things along the way. So please be open-minded about taking on jobs and use every one of those opportunities to learn and to think about the larger lessons, good and bad. And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our featured speaker tonight. She's a 2018 graduate from our Languages Department, flagship Language and International Business. Back then it was called Language and International Trade, right?
Yeah.
Program who double majored in French. She's also a Phi Beta Kappa graduate. Just a side note here. Phi Beta Kappa, founded in 1776, is the oldest honor society in the United States. If you get an invitation to join, and those generally go out in your senior year, please do so. It's an exclusive club. Our speaker was also a Spiro Institute intern, as John just mentioned, so it's only right that she returns to us tonight to share her story and her insights. She grew up wanting to be a veterinarian, and that same instinct to care for animals still guides her work today. I don't want to take anything away from her own observations, but she's founder and president of Companion, an AI operating system for companion animal health and wellness. Michelle's work is fueling a new era of animal wellness with a continuously evolving health roadmap, using AI to anticipate problems, personalize care, and strengthen the bond between pets and the people who love them. I hope she will take a little time to talk about AI and share her thoughts about how we best navigate this new and powerful technology so that it helps rather than hurting us as a species and a culture. Driven by a lifelong love of animals and a belief that technology is important and irreplaceable, it strikes me that she's doing her best to retain what she learned in the humanities about preserving the best that is human and marrying that with current technology in an entrepreneurial venture. So I'm super excited to hear what she has to say. So please join me in giving a warm Clemson welcome to Michelle Wiltse.
Well, it's great to be back and really, really pleased to have this conversation with you all. And to be quite frank, this is very much, I made this speech around the arts and humanities, but please, science students, take this to heart. You need it, especially in a world where AI is very much leveling the playing field. And so I could talk all about Companion, and I'll do that here and there, but you can look us up and you can read all about us. You can ask me questions after the fact about my corporate experience, around my startup and founder experience. But today, I really want to have a human conversation with you. Something I wish I heard when I was in your shoes sitting right there. And so life, and especially in your career, is almost never a straight line. You're going to loop, you're going to go backwards, you will very likely change your mind. And so what matters far more than your first job title is the lens you bring to that journey. What you're learning here today at Clemson and how you bring that to your next role. So how you choose to see those wins and losses, and how you take strengths and what you might consider weaknesses, which are not, and turn that into raw material, the backbone for how you will carry that forward. And so AI can automate a lot of tasks, and it's getting better and better at doing so, and we'll talk about that. But it can't decide what any of that means for you and how you choose in terms of what you do with that. So it's your direction, it's how you design what you do, and keyword here is the discipline to keep showing up for it. And so this is me throughout my life. What do I mean by purpose? And that's going to be really the topic of our conversation today, purpose in the age of AI. And so the classic dictionary style definition, the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. A person's sense of resolve or determination. I do like that one. And then something you might wake up and feel in terms of that more meaning in life sense is purpose is a central self-organizing life aim, or purpose is that feeling that your life is about something bigger than immediate comfort or success. And then when it comes to being a founder or entrepreneur, that problem you are committed to solving, and that's something for which you are committed to solving it. And then lastly, which is my favorite, that more philosophical. Purpose is not something you find, it's something you create by the choices you choose to accept and the responsibilities you accept. And so it's very much not a pre-written script please don't let ChatGPT determine what your purpose is. Choose what you stand for and build around it. And so again, we're going to talk about purpose at the age of AI. And so remember, your major, whatever you major in or minor in, it will never be your limitation. It is your lens. So hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Wiltse, and I'm honored to be back at Clemson. Very full circle for me, as I was part of the College of Arts and Humanities and the Spiro Institute for Entrepreneurship. And much of those building blocks is very much the backbone of my company today. And so we'll talk about purpose, what it is and what it isn't, and how you arts and humanities students, and this is really important for you science students, might be the most important in the room right now in a world that is absolutely obsessed with AI. And AI is here, it's transforming a lot of things, but it's not something to be afraid of. And so in the practical sense, it is leveling the playing field in that it can automate a lot of tasks and it gets better and better at doing so. So how are you unique? We're going to talk about the human experience, the arts and humanities experience. And so we have the human condition, which is universally those things that we all go through as humans from birth until death. And then we have the human experience, which is those unique things, those building blocks that make you uniquely you. And so as an employer myself, I don't so much care about the lines on your resume. I want to know why you're here in front of me. And so we're hearing a lot about what AI can do. However, it can't really empathize because empathy means putting yourself in someone else's shoes with all their history and context. It can't quite read between the lines a good historian, lawyer, or writer can. And it absolutely can't quite imagine what has not existed yet. It's that strange mix of experience, curiosity, and keyword courage that leads to new ideas as an entrepreneur, new art, and new ways of living. And so that's your job. Please don't stop thinking, don't stop asking questions, and I beg you, don't hand it over to a machine. And so as Dr. Hannon alluded to, you'll hear a lot in the market as a student in that there are certain hiring freezes or that AI is taking over certain jobs. Please don't think it's a ceiling. Use AI to assist you in your thinking, your critical thinking, adaptation. We're just scratching the surface on this earth in terms of those problems that have yet to be solved and those things that we're understanding. So use it as an assistant and can you continue to push forward with what you have and what you're learning here at Clemson. And so when I talk about purpose tonight, I had a big misconception when I came to Clemson. I thought it was going to hit me over the head when I was 22. I thought it was one point in time. I thought it was one great job title, one success. And little did I know, it's really this internal compass. And so for me, it was both my reason and my resolve. And so what matters to you, and then in terms of resolve, how you execute it. And so really, your reason doesn't mean much unless you commit and show up for it. And that's really important today. And so I want to talk about you and your lens and how your story can turn into something that you are very proud of. And so at the end of all of this, if you don't take anything from this talk, I want you to walk out of the room at least feeling confident. And that's something I wish I felt more when I graduated. And so what am I aiming at in terms of purpose as a direction, and why this instead of something else? And so the squiggly line is actually being very generous in terms of my trajectory in life. And I can't tell you the amount of lows and doors that closed in my face. And what I'm trying to portray here is that life is not linear and that your human experience will really be the building blocks of what you choose to do, whether you go into a corporation, you take a gap year, or you're a founder. And so I'm going to try to give a very brief overview of my life, and you'll see how it's very interconnected, and I want you to reflect it back on yourself. Bear with some of the pictures. iPhones didn't exist throughout my life. And so I was born overseas in Madrid, Spain. So my father and my family was moved over to Hamburg, Germany for quite a few years, and then ultimately Madrid, Spain for business. And so from a very young age, I learned the importance of culture, cross-border relations. My family was in Germany during the Cold War. I hope you all know what that is. And my father crossed Checkpoint Charlie. And so I was born from older parents, and where both sets of my grandparents lived through World War II. My grandfather was the head historian of the US Army, and he was in Paris, France during the war, where he met his future wife, Janine. and my grandmother, who was born and raised in Paris during the war. Her father was a prisoner of war. She watched the Nazis electrocute children, and she was part of the underground resistance, helping the Jews escape the Nazis in Paris. History is important. It may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So don't be afraid to reference it, and don't be afraid to question it. And then on the other hand, growing up, I was absolutely obsessed with animals and nature. Arguably had better conversations with my pets than I did humans. And then I also really had this deep love for history, art. I was obsessed with music. I was one of those punk emo kids. And growing up, I said, I want to be a veterinarian when I grow up. Very much an affirmation at the time. Then on top of that, keeping in mind my family was coming from Europe, I played very high-level soccer for many, many years before coming to Clemson. That was my world. It was all consuming. Both my brothers were on the US men's national team. So naturally, being the youngest, I wanted to follow in their footsteps. And I very much learned competition, teamwork, humility, grit, discipline, perseverance. Those little things that you think may not matter, but very much come full circle. Here was the problem. I was being defined by something that was not actually my purpose. It was all consuming. Somewhere along the way, I lost my lens. I lost that part of me that loved learning for its own sake. I forgot that I loved animals. And so when I decided to go to Clemson not playing soccer, I was completely lost. I had a skill set and a sense of what I liked, but no idea how it added up to my purpose. Again, thinking that purpose was going to be one perfect job and major and one final answer. And so little did I know it was really something that keeps evolving, an internal compass. And so I did what probably a lot of you are doing, and you absolutely should do it in college. I threw myself into everything. I joined a sorority, which after 2 years did not work out for me, by the way. Youth group, running club, Spiro Institute, and certain things absolutely fueled my fire. The Spiro Institute was instrumental in terms of the internships I had, connections I made, foundation I set. Running club gave me really that regimented routine and athletics I was looking for. And then I was a biochem major for 2 years. And it wasn't until I met a professor who met Michelle as a person and not just my grades. Professor and my advisor, Dr. Eric Toya, probably doesn't even know this, but he was absolutely instrumental to my entire college career and professional career. And so I met him when I was a biochem major, and I was participating in Clemson's Remembering D-Day program abroad. And so that took place in Paris and Normandy. And he really saw past my confusion and reflecting back on who is Michelle, who is she becoming, and not just what I was doing. And so Dr. Toyer, Dr. Hannon, who saw Michelle, this tells you how important having conversations are, putting yourself out there, and how important relationships are to your journey, especially in a world of AI and we're all behind screens, and how they can impact your journey. And funny enough, Dr. Toy and I had very different worldviews, but it never stopped us from having human intellectual conversations. And we still do to this day. And so being parts of the arts and humanities as well, I studied abroad for almost a year and a half. And the small intimate classes, parts that were part of arts and humanities, as well as study abroad, shaped my worldview and did far more than my resume could tell. And so I want to tell you all this. I was still a little bit lost when I graduated. I was very much sort of applying to very practical jobs. You will see hello underpaid right there. Really just blindly applying to things. I had no framework because I lost, again, my lens. How can I use my major and my experiences to bring something new to this role? And I never looked at jobs that way. Was still trying to find something to hit me over the head. And so I took a very low paying analyst job as a sports analyst up in Connecticut. And Dr. Toya looked at me when I was graduating and said, Michelle, where is the poetry in that? Not because of the job, but because of how I was viewing it. Basically, it was saying, Michelle, just don't lose yourself when you go out into the professional world. Bring what makes you special to that role. And at the time, I thought, oh, it's just a poetic, lofty comment. and it forever lingered with me. And it actually allowed me to take the risk and have the courage to start my own company later on. So it's little building blocks. So if there's one thing I want you to take from this section, it's your major is never going to be your limitation. It's a lens. And for my arts and humanities students here, you're learning to ask in an age of AI, what does this mean? For whom? In what context? At what cost? You're also learning to say, these are the kinds of problems, communities, and values I care enough about that I want to keep coming back to. And so for me, I didn't realize it, but that through line was loving animals, caring very deeply about people, their grief, their love, their family, and wanting to make something that actually helps people and not encourages doom scrolling. And so that will come very full circle. And then we have purpose as a design. So how you choose to build and behave if this is what you care about. And this is very important as a founder and an entrepreneur. So keeping in mind, I graduated from Clemson and took that low-paying analyst role. And so on paper, it looked nothing like my major. And that very well may happen to you. And I wasn't qualified in the classical sense. However, I brought something else: grit, work ethic, a drive towards my goals. I was MVP employee within 3 months, not because I was the smartest or most technical in the room, but because I could read messy information and make sense of it. I could ask good questions, I could articulate, and I cared about the humans I worked with. That's purpose as a design, how you show up, how you work, and how you treat people. And so I do want to tie this directly to the arts and humanities pillars. And so you'll see those here. And keep in mind, this is really important for you science students as well. Take it from me, I worked with engineers, very high quality engineers for many, many years. And so we have writing. The humanities teaches you the weight of your words. I'm going to tell you, if I get one more thing from ChatGPT, I'm going to vomit. Please give me a run-on sentence, just use commas. Use your own language, please. What makes you special is the way you can articulate and the way you can take something very challenging and basically explain it in one paragraph. That's really important for you all. And it might seem basic, but you'd be surprised at how many people cannot do this. I'm telling you, it will set you apart. And then we have ethics. We're very privileged to live in a country where you can bake in your ethics and your values into something that you build, whether you're a founder or start a project in your company. And so can we versus should we? In technology especially, and I've been in this field long enough, especially with AI, everybody says, can we build this? Can we build this? It's about the money, very much so. Not enough people are asking, should we build this? And so your humanities background trains you to see those trade-offs, unintended consequences, power dynamics, and do I need to hire someone whose voice is missing from the table? And so as a founder and entrepreneur, if you want to take your company in one direction under one vision and under core values, you need to be able to articulate all of that across different types of people. It's a core skill that you're learning here today at Clemson. And so again, bake your values into what you build early. Please don't make sure they're not an afterthought. And then we have pre-law. And this one's really interesting. You don't have to become a lawyer to think like one. And we often think of lawyers as very black and white careers. However, they're the ones who can spot ambiguity and ask, where could this go wrong? And Companion, my company, my favorite person to work with is our attorney. I could sit with him in a room for hours because he has the framework. He's able to reference history, bring it back to current context, and read between the lines and spot the gray area. It makes him a really brilliant person. And key here, it allows me to trust him. So in a world of AI, we don't know where a lot of information is coming from or the content that is produced. But for someone like my attorney, the walls have been let down. I know he's referencing history. He's using his own education. And so I keep him very close. And that's rare nowadays. And so bring that with you in terms of whatever journey you have next. And then lastly, fulfillment and intimacy. Small classes, real conversations. Cherish the small classes that you have where you're not just a number, to be frank. Be an active listener, build trust, get uncomfortable, look people in the eyes, and sit with nuance. And this will make you a better collaborator, manager, advocate, and founder. And then think of it this way, your degree, no matter what it is not just content knowledge, it's allowing you to see people and systems and being that hybrid, bridging the gap, so no matter how the landscape is changing under your feet, you can adapt to it. And that's critical because things will change very quickly once you get into the professional world. And so prior to starting Companion, I worked for one of the top management consulting firms in the world. I was working for Deloitte Consulting's AI and data practice. And I took the job because I wanted the challenge. And quite frankly, when I started, it was such a tech-heavy position, keeping in mind my background. I said, oh my gosh, what in the world have I done? I was not qualified. They absolutely threw me to the wolves with no training. And I wanted to jump ship. But instead of doing that, for the first time, I finally took a step back and said, wait, I'm surrounded by very high IQ individuals with a lot of hard skills. How can I be different? And so when they did throw me to the wolves, I came out a pack leader because of my EQ and because of my arts and humanities background. I was able to articulate between technology, those systems, and people. And really no one else could do that. And so I was able to set myself apart, again, in a world where the playing field is becoming very flat. And so just to add to the chaos, I had 2 children while I was at Deloitte. And after I came back from my second maternity leave, I started Companion. Because at Deloitte, I was building multi-agent AI systems, so multiple large language models working together. And we're building these tools for very large financial firms in the enterprise. And for the first time, typically with the technology we use, I was like, it's okay. For the first time with this agentic technology, I said, wow, this is transformative. And so I took a step back and I distinctly remember sort of sitting in my chair. I looked out the window at my children playing outside. And I said, if AI is here and it's going to be transformative, we need kind, human-centered, conscious, cognitive leaders that will guide this technology and articulate to the world why that's important. I wanted to bring humans closer and back to humanity than farther away. And if this technology was going to be there, someone needed to step in. So that's why I founded Companion. It's my way of taking everything, keep in mind my journey, that I love since I was young, love for animals, the sciences, values from arts and humanities, and focusing it on one genuine problem. Helping families understand their companion's health and bringing them closer to their animals, not farther away. And so I didn't become a founder for the title. I cared enough about a problem to build the solution and understand this is just one chapter of my definition of purpose, and yours will look very different. And so don't be concerned on any fallbacks that you have, any doors that are closed, and your journey may take a very long time. And so I do want to show Companion's brand story here. But the point of showing this, one is none of this was created by AI. And I actually had the idea for this storyline and how to translate it to pet owners while I was going for a run. Curiosity, critical thinking. And it was a Clemson grad that actually put this together, Jack Birchfield. You may recognize him in the video. He's getting his degree right now in human psychology. And so I asked Jack, I said, why didn't you use an AI voiceover? And he said, I can do a better job. I can add more emotion to it. And I thought he did a really brilliant job. And so if we go back to the deck here, last thing is purpose as a discipline. I can't tell you how important this is. It's the practice of showing up, and discipline translates to traction. And growing up, my soccer coach told me, because I was paralyzed by fear, Michelle, don't wait for the game to come to you. You have to go to the game. Your purpose is not going to just hit you in the face. Just like in everything in life, you have to go out and fight for it. And so like I mentioned, you will loop, backtrack, and often change your mind. And so I went from an emo punk kid to a serious soccer player, from terrible heartbreak to being married and a mother of 2, and going 10 steps back, another step forward, and then finally to a founder of AI-driven animal health company. And then specifically being a founder and a CEO of my company, have to be very accountable. Again, traction for my purpose and my vision. And so sometimes I have to do very difficult things, like moving someone out of a role because they don't fit our core values, or having to spend additional time and money so that we don't cut corners and we build our AI with ethics. And so that's very important for you if you choose to take that route. And so at different points in my life, people describe me, talking about doors closing in my face, overly sensitive, emotional, too regimented, obsessive. And at the time, I took those as weaknesses. But over time, I changed my lens. I'm deeply empathetic and emotionally tuned in. I'm energized and I'm passionate. I'm disciplined and I'm absolutely relentless. The raw material didn't change. My story didn't change. The interpretation did. And so if I ever got too comfortable, I pushed myself. That's discipline, that's commitment, that's showing up. And that is what is going to set you guys apart when you graduate, and today and tomorrow and moving forward. And so I do want to leave you with some practical advice. Protect your curiosity and critical thinking. Follow the rabbit holes. Take those side projects. I can't tell you the amount of side hustles I've had, some great, some really, really bad ideas. And that's your future unfair advantage, and often the seed of a business or project later. And so your grades are critically important, but ship things and not just grades. And entrepreneurs, they don't wait until things are perfect before they ship them. And then please stay close to humans and humanity. Talk to people, be an active listener, and don't just talk about them, because that's how real problems get solved, when you really understand people. Great products, great services, and movements are born out of this. And arts and humanities trainings makes you really good at this. And then please make ethics a requirement. Do not outsource your mind, body, or soul to AI, and you're allowed to change your mind. And so when much of our lives are put on autopilot, and I get caught using AI a lot in myself, and in an age of AI, don't outsource that thinking. Your ability to understand people, stories, ethics is your superpower, so use it. And your arts and humanities, again, science students, please don't lose sight of this, is an entrepreneurial edge. And it's really purposeful, and they make great leaders. You already know how to tell a story, frame an argument, understand an audience, so you shouldn't apologize for that. And you're being trained to cope with ambiguity, manage competing perspectives, adapt, build trust. And my favorite is, how to hold a group of different people together and move them towards a single goal or something that matters. And then last thing here is, be really ruthless with your time and energy. It's your main source of capital right now. And so being busy doesn't mean you're being purposeful, but at the same time, give yourself a lot of grace. Like I said, please walk out of this room being so confident. You're really in a phenomenal, place just sitting here today listening to me, and I thank you for that. And so it's really full circle for me, starting Companion. I saw a real problem, families who love their pets but were lost, trying to understand their health. In the market, vets that were extremely overworked, in an operating system that was extremely fragmented, in a field where we have so much science, but not enough ways to connect it to the real lives in a humane and understandable way. And so this is basically the Companion ecosystem. And again, in the interest of time, if you have more questions about my company itself or anything behind it, I'm happy to go and take a deep dive. But language and international trade, which was my major, trained me to think beyond my own bubble. And I really learned how to communicate across disciplines and perspectives. So my role now, I'm basically translating between veterinarians, pet owners, technologists, and partners to build something that truly helps families and their animals. And so bringing this all back, I know this is not the best PowerPoint, but my point is here, everything in my life, my human experience, the poetry within was interconnected, and I had no idea. It's what made me unique. It allowed me to bring a different lens to my career as well as my personal life. It was that human experience. And what a privilege it is to be human, to experience love, loss, competition, success, all of those things that you're going through in college today, as well as within your degree. And so AI will continue to get better at pretty much almost everything that can be automated, as well as some human abilities. And so it will generate answers faster, summarize extremely well. And I've seen it do autonomous tasks in my own company. But your job is to choose what matters to you, hold that line ethically, and use your gifts to build something that matters. Like I said in the Anthropic commercial, there's still so much on this earth that has yet to be discovered and solved, and we're just scratching the surface. And, I think it's a really cool time to be a student because, there are no more silos. You might have art students that go into the sciences. You may have an AI prompt engineer that goes into the arts. And so really explore all the different types of roles, whether you're working for a bank or a theater, and don't let a title determine how you feel. Don't let an algorithm determine your ethics. Please bring your own lens into everything that you do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We have now time for questions. So Pammy over there has the mic. We have some people in Zoom. Thank you for being with us. So please wait for the mic to make your questions so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. So my question for you is, when you were creating Companion and when it comes to creating something with technology that you don't fully understand with like coding and everything, how did you keep yourself from getting too obsessive over like perfecting those little things?
I'm still working on that today. And so as a founder, it's your job to be paranoid, and that's a good thing, and keep everybody else's morale up and moving forward. And so that's very normal to want things to be perfect. But you have to understand that, especially when you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't have to be great to start to make money and generate revenue. And so in terms of what has to be perfect, we're very much at Companion holding that line with ethics. So in terms of not cutting corners, making sure our AI is grounded, but in terms of things like UI, certain features, when it comes to user experience, if we have to backlog something for later, so be it, so that we can prioritize other things. So it's a continuous battle that I fight myself, but you can't get hung up on perfection. Otherwise, you'll have competition that will move past you.
How's it going? So I was wondering, just more of a technical question.
Yeah.
Did you guys build the AI like system in-house, or did you have to get like external parties to help you build that out?
Great
stuff
question.
like that.
And this was something, a difficulty that we faced early on in terms of I was not planning on coding this or developing it myself. So we actually had a Latin American group start to do it at first. But because agent technology is relatively new, they actually were not able to fully complete the product that we needed. And so I had to make the hard decision, and we lost money initially, and we moved and outsourced our development to Ukraine. And so ultimately, Companion would love to move in-house development, but that does cost additional money. And our team right now is really, really brilliant and disciplined. And the biggest thing is, because this technology is changing almost every day, they're able to adapt, and that's what's important. Good question.
Hey, my name's Darren. So you talked about being lost like when you're about to graduate, which is relatable. And so I just was kind of wondering, like, how did you shift from being lost to like betting on yourself?
Great question. I think a little bit just in terms of throwing yourself into everything and taking on the challenge. When I played very high-level soccer, that shaped me because I was so paralyzed by fear that I couldn't quite succeed and live up to my potential, though I practiced every single day. And so taking that lesson learned and understanding that if I live driven by fear, I'm not going to accomplish anything. And so it's sort of like you only live once. You really have to take everything head on, and those experiences will help you define your purpose, keeping in mind that it constantly evolves. And so I think just having a lot of grace with yourself, surrendering to those things that you can't change, but then that keyword courage to change the things you can, it's critically important.
Okay, so in regards to like AI advancing and like taking over certain industries or like taking over like tasks and recent developments with AI, what would you say is like one thing that sort of scares you or like something you're sort of scared about AI like taking over, something that you think would be like going too far or maybe like it's advancing too quickly or too much?
I don't want to speak outside of my remit, but in terms of what I've seen, especially at Deloitte, AI is getting very, very good at automating tasks that are very routine, so A to B to C. And in terms of AI agents, which is what we're working with at Companion, they're a little bit more autonomous in that they can, collaborate with other agents and move beyond a linear manner. And so, again, don't be afraid of AI. It's not a ceiling. Really use it as an assistant in terms of, again, those automated tasks, like back-end operations. And so if I'm going to relate it to what's going on in the market, like for a consulting firm, you see a lot of sort of a freeze in terms of hiring analysts. That's because a lot of these analysts were doing things like research and writing and putting together PowerPoints. And that's still very much needed. I can't tell you the amount of hallucinations and mistakes AI makes. I deal with it every day. But we need people that can think out of their own bubble and take it a step further. And so I encourage you to, beyond just a resume, send to an employer a research project that you've done and how you saw between the gaps, how you spotted a hallucination that AI made. That really shows that you can think critically and that you can, again, sit with that nuance, which AI still struggles to do. And so please don't be afraid of what AI will take over. And, the media loves to hype certain things up. It is amazing, some of the transformation, but we still have a long ways to go.
So AI is what's taken over. It's a big investment to like create your own model, isn't it? So what were the initial green flags, like indicators that you looked for when you were starting out that led you to find that this is a problem that people need solved? And how are you currently getting are you like in a pre-seed stage, or like where are you right now with funding to keep it going?
Yeah, good questions. In terms of stage, we're Series A right now. And the harsh realities of getting a valuation and having to raise money. And so we're very knee deep in that. And then in terms of the green flag, in terms of building Companion. So as I mentioned, I was using these tools for financial firms and enterprises, and we're taking their good data as the foundation for building these tools and basically generating recommendations on their internal controls and streamlining a lot of processes. And so I really saw the benefits that would have taken 10,000 people to do. And AI could do it through a few functional AI agents. Again, those back-end operations. And I took a step back at everything in my life, my love for animals, my dog, and I'm absolutely health and longevity obsessed. Our co-founder and my husband is a doctor of physical therapy. And we said, how can we bring all of this together? How can we get the stars to align in a very ethical way? And so in terms of like a green light, we work with vets, we work with specialists, researchers, scientists to make sure that any recommendation we're producing is quality and that we have a high confidence score. We source all of our insights. And then in addition, I don't want to get too technical here, but we actually don't train our models because we don't really believe in it because there's bias and it's a very fragmented system.
Yeah, so I guess just to piggyback off of the questions that they had, I guess when it comes to building something like this, how do you manage, I guess, the growth, right? Because as an economic major, I'm still trying to understand what a bubble is. Are we in an AI bubble? So when it comes to growing, I'm sure you want to understand what your competitors are doing, but like you said beforehand, you want to keep the humanities there to where you're not evolving in a direction that's counterproductive.
Yeah.
How do you make those decisions as a founder?
It's a really, really good question. And one of those things that keeps me up at night as a founder in a good way, because I'm accountable and I have a responsibility. And so to your point, in terms of this bubble that we're in, a lot of investment is going into these AI companies that are cutting corners. And so we have competitors in the space that are not working with vets are trying to replace them, are not citing their sources. The data that is fueling their models is very biased and fragmented. And yet the end user, the consumer, doesn't realize this. And so for me as a founder, I need to be able to take some of our money and use marketing to educate the consumer why Companion is different from the rest. And so my job is never ending. Driving up here to Clemson, I was busy working on that marketing and how Companion is different. And so in terms of this bubble that you're talking about, yeah, a lot of money is being pumped into AI and some of it is not ethical and grounded. However, I think what we'll see in the long term is those companies failing because they are cutting corners. And I think, especially with AI, trust is everything. And so if they kill that relationship with, let's say, the pet owner, it's done. Versus Companions, we're taking our time so that we can be trustworthy and transparent in a connected ecosystem.
Michelle, again.
Thank you, guys.
So I just have two quick questions. though. I know Rose has at least 2 dogs. How many? 2? Yeah. How many other people in here have pets? Yeah, like 80%. Okay. And so if I understand this correctly, we don't, but so your product is going to help their pets live longer and healthier. Is that right?
Yes, and that is the goal. And so we're using this multi-agent framework and working with veterinarians and scientists and specialty veterinary domains to be sort of that first line of care between clinic and home so that you can get closer to your companion, better understand them. We use it for our own dogs at home, and it's made me a better pet parent. And at the end of the day, they don't have a voice. And so using their data to read between the lines and connect the dots is what we're aiming to do.
Fabulous. Yeah. Now, you had a good question about competitors and so on and so forth. As I understand it, this is at 10,000 feet. Tom Brady cloned his dog. Is that true? I don't know if that's a gimmick or what all is going on. But that being said, that's a potential threat, right? I'm not a pet owner, so don't crucify me, but like having a disposable pet because you just have Fido 1, Fido 2, Fido 3, Fido 4, and you're not as concerned. But that has to be something entrepreneurs, to her point, she mentioned staying up at night, there's all kinds of different threats out there to the existing business model that she's working on developing. But I got to ask you though, I don't know for fact because we haven't talked about this, but did you quit Deloitte? Is that a good way of putting it, or?
Yes, I did, which was a very difficult decision, talking about ethics. I actually felt very uncomfortable because I was using these multi-agent systems. There was nothing like proprietary, it's very public knowledge, but I was transferring it over to the animal space. And I no longer felt comfortable doing both jobs. I clearly wasn't doing one 100%. And so I made the decision, I took a major pay cut to start Companion. But funny enough, talking about purpose, I've never been so at peace with something in my life. And I worked with some of the smartest individuals I've ever had the privilege of working with.
Awesome. So I want to give you courage tonight. There could come a time in your career. I quit electric and gas utility. Nobody quits the power company. I quit IBM, Westchester, world headquarters. Nobody quits IBM, that kind of thing. So just someday, maybe that'll rattle your brain and you'll feel compelled for one reason or another. And it's not quitting. That's like has a bad connotation. You're not really quitting. You're just, what do you call it, repositioning? Transitioning. There you go. So moving on. Yeah. So don't be bashful about that. Well, she mentioned curiosity. We would encourage you, not just the arts and humanities students, but the business students, any science students, to spend a minute or two introducing yourselves to a couple of the companies that are here tonight. You're never going to have a better ratio in terms of your interest in companies. You go over to Little John, there's 30 of you in line for one company and one job. These people are here. They're interested in hiring you for projects, for part-time work, for full-time work, all kinds of different things. So let's give Maggie a hand. This will be the last time, but she's amazing, puts this all together for us. And let's hand over the microphone. Maggie will close. We do have these sheets that describe what these companies are about, but we're going to let them introduce themselves too. So thank you very much for coming, and welcome back to Clemson after Thanksgiving weekend.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren French, and I graduated from Clemson in 2015 with a BA in Performing Arts Theater. Oh yeah, yes. I work at South Carolina Children's Theater now as the School and Community Engagement Coordinator. So my job is like the liaison to teachers and schools. I book field trips, I coordinate tours, and I do community outreach and engagement like tonight. And we have different internship opportunities that I'd love to talk to you about, not just performance, not just acting, but technical theater, arts administration, and some business internship opportunities. So my table's back there. I'd love for you to come stop by. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Welcome, Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Robinson. I am the new manager of the Clemson Area African American Museum. I've been in my position about 9 or so weeks. So I'm very new to the position. At the Clemson Area African American Museum, we are the only museum in the county of Pickens that exclusively focuses on the history of African Americans. So we are doing our part to uplift and uncover and preserve the history of Black folks here in Clemson and the larger Pickens County. So as I mentioned, I am the newest hire of a 2-person team at the museum. So while we're not currently looking for positions, we are assessing our needs, and we are definitely interested in the very near future, hopefully having interns and potentially full-time and part-time positions relating to program management, community engagement, communications, as well as collections management. So someone who would oversee and help us manage our archives at the museum, and folks who are very interested in uplifting and building the upcoming exhibits that we will be having at the museum. So looking forward to speaking with you all, learning more about what you do. And I guess a little bit of background about me. I am a graduate of Spelman College, history major, Georgetown University, Global International Comparative History, and Penn State History. So whole lot of history for any historians back here if you want to chat more about that as well. So thank you. Looking forward to meeting you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. And thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight. Like Dr. Hannon said, this is our closing night for the Launchpad, which was a very, very busy semester. And it was all possible because all of you took the time to be with here. Also, the team in the College of Arts and Humanities, they were amazing. We love everything that you're doing, and especially because I am also a humanities graduate. Definitely, I understand the importance of what Michelle was saying, and humanities is for everybody. It trains us all to be more human, and this is what we need. Take the time to talk to these amazing ladies. Michelle is also having a table in the back, and we hope to see you again. We have a ton of amazing events in the spring. So don't be strangers. We hope to see you soon. Thank you, everybody.